Bring it up.
Yeah, we're waiting for it.
All right. This is our last stop of the tour. So we are on the south side of Redbud Run right now. Over there, that's the second woods, and then if you head in that direction, you're gonna have the Alabama Monument. Any of you guys had joined with Ranger Owens and his tour, that's where he would have brought you guys. Ended off right around the Alabama Monument over there. So just kind of orient you, let you know where you are at the battlefield. So as Hayes' brigade and Johnson's brigade begin crossing the Redbud Run and they're reforming on the south side of the run, just down that slope from us, you're gonna have the Confederates. They're reforming their position right here. So Gordon's division, they're lined up. You're gonna have Atkinson's, Georgian's position roughly in this region right here. They're positioned like this, and then they will curve around just like that. Beyond that knoll is going to be where Braxton's artillery would have been positioned, and then further in that direction, just where my hand is pointing, that's going to be where Colonel Patton's brigade are set up, as well as some of the other units of Gabriel Wharton's division, although the majority of Gabriel Wharton's division are in the reserve down in that direction. So as Duval's men begin mounting their attack on the south side of the Redbud Run, they're surging up that ravine that we had just walked up. Thoburn will begin his attack on the south side of Redbud Run. So he'll be charging from that position out in the distance, perpendicularly or parallel to the Redbud Run itself. He'll charge right through this property, and as Duval's men are surging up this ravine, you're gonna have Thoburn's men hammering the corner of the left flank of Gordon's division. So this is gonna be Atkinson's brigade that they're hammering right into. It's a good idea, a good picture right here. Give you an idea where we are. We're positioned right here, so where the 23rd Ohio would be charging through. The property that you see all the way down there, that is the Hackwood House. Hackwood House is built by Hessian prisoners of war that were captured during the Battle of Saratoga. Many of these Hessian POWs might have been captured by Daniel Morgan's famed Rifle Corps, who's raised in the Shenandoah Valley. Daniel Morgan lives in Winchester. He's buried in Winchester today. And many of the descendants of that Daniel Morgan Rifle Corps who captured some of those Hessian POW, or some of those Hessian soldiers that would eventually send them here, many of those descendants will make up Jubal Early's Army of the Valley here at the Battle of 3rd Winchester. So something to keep in mind that does tie us to the American Revolution here on this site. But as Thoburn's men join up on the attack, he's going to call up those last three regiments that are positioned basically against the Hackwood property, or against the Huntsberry property, all the way down on the north side of Redbud Run from here. Then he's going to recall those three units. They'll join up the main attack, and they will start to rout Gordon's division right here on this property. So they are hammering in to the left flank of Gordon's men. They're beginning a rout right through the Hackwood property. At that time, Colonel Patton's men, they fall back to a position west of the Hackwood house. It's a stone wall that runs from Hackwood Lane to the Valley Pike itself. They'll position there, and they're going to create a pretty stout defense from that position. As Duval's men are surging up this ravine, and they're starting to surge down into that low ground where Colonel Patton's men are going to be positioned, they're going to make a sacrificial stand. And Patton's men, remember those West Virginians, remember those are the same units that would have fought against those Army of West Virginia guys right over Redbud Run. They're fighting against each other still on the Hackwood property. They're holding off right out there for the rest of the Confederate line to withdraw back closer to Winchester, where they will regroup. Now, Patton's stand, it definitely is, like I said, a sacrificial stand right there. Colonel Patton, we got a great picture of him right here. This sign kind of took my thunder away by printing off a better quality picture right there. But Colonel Patton, he's a Virginia Military Institute graduate. He is the grandfather of Patton of World War II fame. He is the motivation for Patton from World War II fame to even join the military to begin with. As Patton's brigade are fighting out there in the Hackwood property, like I said, they're buying time for the rest of the Confederate Army to reform on the outskirts of Winchester. They're going to hold off, and they're eventually going to start withdrawing back just at the same time as Breckinridge is sending in the rest of Wharton's division to that same area of the battlefield. And as they're withdrawing from the Hackwood property back towards Winchester, Colonel Patton is going to be hit in the thigh by an artillery shell, and he is mortally wounded. Brought back to a private residence here in Winchester, Virginia, where he passes away about a week later. He is now buried out in the Mount Hebron Cemetery, the Stonewall section of that cemetery, right next to his brother. And like I had said, he was a big motivation for his grandson to go ahead and join the military himself. So we've got a great picture right here from the Mount Hebron Cemetery here in Winchester of Patton, his son, and his grandson right there at Colonel Patton's grave, or that's the Patton brothers' grave. Colonel Patton and his brother are both buried there. Sorry. great photograph right there, ties it into somebody I know you all know.
And his brother was killed at Gettysburg, right?
Yes, his brother was killed at Gettysburg.
Yeah.
And they're buried right next to the Ashby brothers as well.
Yeah.
So. Now, as Patton's men are having their sacrificial stand just west of the Hackwood property, like I had mentioned, the rest of Wharton's division are sent to the areas around west of Hackwood property, between that house and the Valley Pike in the distance. And they are going to basically be the last Confederate reserves sent into the battlefield. They will hold the Union Army of the West Virginia at bay in that area north of town. But remember, the Federal cavalry are still bearing up the Valley Pike in a southern direction from there. So eventually, as Wharton's men set up a pretty significant defensive line, they're going to position right east of Fort Collier in one of their intermediate positions, which basically is in the shape of an L. The Confederate left is anchored on the Valley Pike at Fort Collier. Wharton's division make up the base of that L, and that will curve around and it'll basically be around the eastern approaches to Winchester itself. But as the Federal cavalry and the Army of West Virginia and the rest of Sheridan's army begin their attack, they're creeping up on the line. Wharton's men are going to hear the worst possible sound for a Confederate infantryman, and that is the sound of Federal cavalry in your rear. So they begin to hear the Federal cavalry wrap around the left of their position, and they will withdraw back to a position even closer into Winchester. Then you're going to have the Federal cavalry. They will spearhead a few attacks that will initiate the final assault on the Confederate positions around Winchester around 5 p.m. that night. They will eventually break the Confederate positions, sending the rebels whirling through Winchester. Now, I do want to mention something pretty neat right here. This is the battle flag of the 36th Virginia Infantry, part of Wharton's division. They're going to position themselves right here to oppose Rutherford B. Hayes and Daniel Johnston's attack on the Red Bud Run. So they'll be positioned right in where my finger is pointing. They will fall back. They'll hold some of that stands right in between here and Fort Collier. They'll fight over at Fort Collier, and when the Union cavalry spear into their position right behind Fort Collier, this battle flag will be captured. Will be captured by the 6th New York Cavalry under the command of General Devon's brigade, or General Devon's division. And this battle flag survives to this day. It is out on display in Richmond, so it still stays within the Old Dominion state. And pretty unique about this, I actually had a 3rd grade uncle who served in the 36th Virginia Battalion. But there's somebody else that you might know from the 36th Virginia Battalion, and that is going to be the Logan County Wildcats, Company B of this unit. The Logan County Wildcats, after the Battle of 3rd Winchester, a number of these guys, they're going to desert. They're going to go back to Logan County, West Virginia, and they're going to follow this man right here, Devil Lance Hatfield.
Yeah.
Now, Devil Lance was a soldier in the 45th Virginia Battalion. They had served in Wharton's division. Devil Lance deserts sometime in 1864. We do not know whether this is before or after the Battle of 3rd Winchester, but as many of those soldiers from the 36th Virginia start to desert, they will go back home to Logan County, and Devil Lance will reform that company. The Logan County Wildcats will become a home guard unit, and they will serve under Devil Lance in the Tug Fork Valley of West Virginia and Kentucky. They will initiate what is the Hatfield-McCoy feud. So, got something a little interesting outside of Civil War history there. But like I had mentioned, you're going to have this battle flag captured by the 6th New York Infantry, 6th New York Cavalry, my apologies. And as the Confederates withdraw through Winchester, Wharton's men are going to defend the rear guard as they fall back through the city. Winchester, the claim to fame for this city during the Civil War, is that it's exchanged between about 72 times throughout that war. When Wharton's men withdraw through the town of Winchester and eventually exit the town, this marks the very final moment that Winchester had Confederate occupation. Now, in 6 hours of combat here on this field, there is more casualties than Stonewall Jackson's entire Valley campaign combined. This battle is going to be the first domino to fall for the Confederate occupation in the Shenandoah Valley. You mix the Union victory here with the victory at Cedar Creek, coupled with the Union victories down in Atlanta, down in Georgia at that same time. This is going to be the victories that Abraham Lincoln rides into re-election season in November of 1864. A big reason why Lincoln assumes re-election is because of the victories here in the Valley that starts here at 3rd Winchester and those victories in Georgia. But like I had said, in 6 hours of brutal, vicious combat on these fields, there's about 9,000 casualties. That includes 1/3 of Jubal Early's Army of West Virginia, the veterans of the 2nd Corps of the Army of Northern Virginia. And as they withdraw through the town, For many of the Union soldiers in Sheridan's army, this is the first time that they saw the backsides of the Army of Northern Virginia, or at least portions of that army. So this is a devastating defeat for Jubal Early. 1/3 of his entire army, roughly 4,000 of the 15,000 men that made up the Army of the Valley, are going to perish in 6 hours of combat in these fields. I appreciate you guys joining us today for this battle walk. If you guys want to see more programs like this set up in the future, if you guys want to see more battlefield land preserved throughout the Shenandoah Valley, more museums open up, more programs and all, I cannot recommend enough becoming a member of the Shenandoah Valley Battlefields Foundation. I know many of you guys in this crowd are already members. If you're not, you gotta become a member. This is the best way to preserve Civil War history in the Shenandoah Valley. It helps us with Civil War preservation, and we keep you entirely updated with all these preservation efforts in the Valley. So if that interests you guys, go see any of our museums or our visitor centers and tell them that you guys want to pick up a membership. If you guys do, you'll see more events like this being held in the future. But thank you again for being here today and for joining us on this battle walk. We really appreciate it.